Tons of hotels, right? Are you going to Beck, the ECC?
No, I'm not. I've used up most of my conference money for the year, so.
Yeah, that is the nice part about working for your own firm.
Yeah, I'm sure.
See a conference?
Yeah, see if you can convince the boss.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yes,
And,
you know, and then when you're a small firm, also you can sometimes say, "Oh, we're a small firm. I don't know if we can come here. I know you want me to speak."
That's
and
true.
Maybe we need a little honorarium, and they'll say, "Oh, here's a free hotel," or whatever. Stuff.
Do you,
Not ACCCC.
Yeah,
Nothing
definitely
ACCCC.
not there.
in your field, do you have professional credits you need to maintain?
No, but I'm on a board of the SWANA, which is the Solid Waste Association
Yeah,
of
a couple
America,
years of success.
and they do offer using
I mean, one change.
that kind of certification, like landfill operators and that sort of stuff. Not
Because
recycling
with
planners.
continuing legal education, if you actually taught the class, you got double or triple,
Ooh.
which that was sweet. And play poker.
Yeah, sorry for the Zoom outfit. I forgot.
So that's big news about the punch pass. I'll have to tell Betsy.
Yeah, bad
Because she
news.
goes over and swims there a lot.
But the monthly is pretty darn cheap. It's hard to
24?
beat $24.
Yeah, that is hard to beat. That is very hard to beat.
It is.
These guys are beating that.
Yeah, it's 50 for maybe an add-on, I think, at 50 or...
Is there, and doesn't it have an initiation fee too?
Yeah, but Jim paid that ages ago. He's been going forever because he swims over there and he does
Yeah.
the bike swimming classes.
Do they, is their outdoor pool open year round?
As much as I do
Because in the summer
many
he's
steps
generally biking
happening.
to, Netherland or Gold Bar or God knows where he goes.
Like, oh, I won't need it.
I had to get him to put a light on his bike, like a flashy
Yeah, I use
Something
CV.
that-
No.
They're cheap too. I've got two clip-on things that.
Yeah, I have loads of them. Again, at
Yeah.
conferences, and I stick him on his bike and he
That's
takes
true.
off.
Very much more powerful, robust.
Doesn't
One
want
from
to
Golder
be.
Associates at the
Yeah.
latest conference, a big thing about this brown, but like LED really light, and what's
Make it
impressive, it was like,
sound like when you go to
like-
transfer,
and it was,
it's not that simple.
the next time, it was
Migrate
great.
over the next
He
2
doesn't
weeks,
want to give the cars
just-
something to aim at.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I find during the day, if someone has one of those strips on, I totally see them way better
Yeah.
than if they don't. At the night, there's no contest, but even in the day, totally draws my attention. It's really valuable, I think.
Yeah.
It's
I've
hard,
seen
there's so
some
much
bikes
going
recently
on.
that are like almost blinding though, so it's like you're almost trying to look away from them, which also isn't ideal.
That's probably good.
But
But it is
It's like spring cleaning.
Now, this is my last RCAC meeting.
Why? Is you're about to be de-elected?
Yeah, I'll run the course.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, it comes to all of us.
Yes, it does.
I'm good. Go evening
yeah,
way
just
you
the
want.
invitation for the guest going away.
great.
I'm good. How about you?
They're doing it nicely.
Kids doing good?
Hey, we're in danger of having a qualm.
I was just thinking,
My
gosh, I
second
wonder if
one
I'm going to
started his freshman year in MCU.
Oh.
Yeah, and then the other one has been there,
Michelle's coming.
and then he's now junior.
Already on to start that.
I got two in college. Yeah, no, one in middle school. She just started the 6th grader.
They were, the last meeting,
Wow.
You
Few
were-
more years.
Yeah,
you
no,
were
yeah,
gonna call him
Well, thanks for squeezing some time in.
for the last meeting, and one person was here.
Yeah, I was supposed to call in also, and he never called me.
Yeah.
Well,
What
it
do I
didn't
have? And I
make,
wrote back a note and said, why aren't you calling me? He says, not a quorum.
Yeah.
not even close,
Yeah.
and it was,
Hello.
and it was supposed to be like a working meeting to prepare the presentation to the board at the next
Yeah.
board meeting. You couldn't,
All things we need to be
I was
super
here
fast, so we'd have something
early
to
summer,
present.
but then I've been missing the meeting.
you couldn't do that.
We should have got on the phone,
Yeah.
Would have
So well.
been, would have been
just
a,
figured it out.
Yeah.
it was my thought, it was, you didn't want to have a half-baked presentation.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped off an application, I think, a little while ago, or
Oh, yeah?
this afternoon. I didn't catch the name. Yeah, one person.
Is it going?
The guy.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, the next board meeting is
Oh, he's actually really
24th,
fast?
and election day is on the 8th, and so 24th is on the
Yeah.
I guess you didn't show up, so.
No, I
You
think
gotta
if you
find
go
her.
to the next
You gotta find her
one,
and heckle her.
She
get sworn
lives
in.
in,
Oh, they're gonna have to pay me to come.
I think that was how it worked. I think I
I'll
had
find out.
how they decide
But
to
it-
where.
it's officially off.
Was there a meeting yesterday?
Oh, bummer, I thought she was
No,
so
there was a
short.
meeting on the
So, okay.
10th.
Maybe this
Yeah,
one.
that
Even
was,
though it was,
yeah.
even though it was a holiday?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
darn.
It was on
I
the
assumed it was
10th.
the 11th.
No. Well,
'Cause
Columbus
I meant
Day
to go
isn't
to
much
it.
of a holiday.
I know, but I meant to go to it because I wanted to, say, hey, the things I wrote in my email to you. Did they extend them?
Yeah,
She was so sort of.
Did they threaten them?
She's going to.
yeah.
I'm gonna go.
Hey, we
Okay,
got a
so
quorum.
just check my stream, so-
Woo!
Looks like
You guys
no,
can have
she
an
didn't go.
election
Okay,
tonight.
okay, bummer.
Oh, yeah.
Bet you call.
Cool.
An election, you can do all kinds of stuff.
Oh, there's
Hi,
Michelle.
Michelle.
Look at this, quorum was present.
Do you hear from Colleen?
Hi, Michelle.
No, I haven't heard anything from him.
How are you?
Okay.
Yeah, she usually films.
Good, she's walking.
No, it's just the 2 meetings I had before this, but
Okay,
ran
but not
over.
from Loveland? No. Okay, that's good.
South Denver.
Okay, South Denver, well, that's far
Not
enough.
necessarily any better.
No, it's actually worse, I think. In terms of
Fun.
traffic.
Hi, everybody. Should we get started? Because I'd love to get out of here for the game.
What a great idea.
Yeah.
Broncos playing tonight, 6 o'clock.
6:25 p.m.
Oh, really? Okay, well.
All right.
Super speedy.
Luckily, my
All right, so I guess we'll call it to order then, huh?
recorder.
We might have something.
Sorry, I wasn't taking the time.
There's a second page to the agenda that had not.
Yeah, so we're going to call it to order? Let's
A
go.
quorum, that's awesome.
have
Thanks,
at it.
everybody.
Yay.
That's great.
If only
Thanks,
we had
everybody,
something
for
to
making
do.
the time to be here tonight on a night of a game.
Oh, good, yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, can we do a leadership election today?
Sure.
Yeah, it's fun there.
So fingers crossed,
All right.
we'll see.
Yeah, please do.
You know they
All
got
right, so
something more than.
we don't need to take attendance or anything, we're good?
I'll know who's here.
All right, so I guess we're open for public comment then. If anybody has anything?
Few updates. So Leah Yancey with Boulder County. I just wanted to share 2 funding opportunities, one that's open and then one that's upcoming. One is zero waste funding. Applications are now being accepted and the applications are due December 5th at noon. They need to be projects that promote waste diversion, but it's fairly flexible otherwise. So infrastructure, reuse, composting, recycling, education, innovation, that sort of thing. And it's up to $10,000 in funding. Eligible entities, local government, nonprofits, schools and school districts, private companies, even individuals. So it's very open. So I mention it both for to see if the town is interested, but also if you want to spread the word, that would be great. And what I'll do is I'll send a link to Martin that you can send around for folks to.
And what was the deadline on that
forward.
again?
It's December 5th.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. And then the other funding opportunity that's coming up is a sustainability matching grants. And so the town has received those now for 2 or 3 years. I was just on the phone with Patrick because he's overseeing the program this year. It's funding the yard waste drop-off site.
Yeah,
And
the
it
additional
sounds
hours
like
of the yard waste site.
yeah, a lot of good activity there. These are grants that are only available to municipalities, unlike the other ones. It's very specific. And it's really intended to provide an opportunity for communities to advance their own priorities. So that's why we're kind of leveraging this resource for towns and cities around the county to pursue your own priorities. And that application will open in January. I bring it up because it's a $15,000 grant from the county, but there's a cash match requirement. And so as you're doing budget cycles right now, I wanted to let folks know that so that town can budget accordingly if it's something of interest. So that's kind of what I've got.
Thank you so much.
What things are eligible for that?
Yeah, that one is everything kind of environmental sustainability related. So business sustainability and then all sorts of residential efforts, whether it be water conservation, waste diversion, again, is under this too. Local food and agriculture, energy and buildings, transportation. We've seen folks use it for bike racks. local community gardens in Louisville. That's what they did recently. Netherlands done some water conservation projects, so that's kind of the scope.
And that's open for also entity and individual?
No,
Only
just for
municipalities.
communities.
Oh.
Municipalities,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So if you think back to last
But you
year,
can
Leah was
partner.
great partnering with us to do the two-hole, the recycling trash can replacements at facility and
Yep.
recycling slash landfill trash can replacements at parks and facilities around town last year. And this year we qualified and we're lucky enough to get a grant from the county to
Mhm.
make the enhancements at the yard waste site. And we've been brainstorming, Patrick and I, about options for next year to try and make some physical enhancements to the yard waste site to make it a little easier to get in and out of there, which is not easy now. So
Right.
that's maybe a little bit of our internal
Sure.
planning horizon.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, you might
But we have till
consider.
January, but that's what we're brainstorming now.
Yep. And you might consider, maybe using the zero waste funding, applying for what you're talking about, and then, another area
Mhm.
under the other grant program to maximize if you really wanted to.
Yeah, it's
So-
been great to partner with county on some of these projects that we've had on our, I don't want to call it our budget wish list. It just hasn't always made it, but when we're able to leverage funds with the county, it always makes it a little easier to try and get it in and budget it and complete it in at that time.
Yeah, and then we're seeing too, it's really great if it kind of jump starts something that a community wants to do and kind of pilot an idea and then prove it out, and then the town or the city sometimes will step in and carry it forward if they, like the outcomes. We've
Okay,
seen that,
that's
so,
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Right.
much for your awesome guidance,
Yeah,
per
you bet.
usual.
Thank you.
All right, so right on to new business and updates.
So couple quick updates. Chili Fest was in September, so this is a holdover item from last month's meeting. The Chili Fest event last month was great, and Tanya was there on behalf of the committee, and I wanted to have a note on here in case you wanted to share a little bit about your experience.
Well, I went there in the second half, and then actually a lot of people stopped by our booth. I think the reusable bag, it's actually attract a lot of traffic, so it was awesome. And then I took some chances to talk to the residents or around, and they're trying to recruit for the committee opening. Actually, there's at least 2 or 3 expressive strong interest in applying, and the one said that she was committed to apply, and but I just talked to Martin, and looks like there's no.
Nobody's applied?
I don't think she did. I know her name, but I don't know where. I know where she lived, and she lived in the apartment, but by the Bell Flatiron, but I didn't actually get her phone number or anything. And she and her husband, I think they were both very interested in our information and the booth, and then she said that she would be very interested in applying. And so,
Fingers crossed.
yeah, I guess I hope that.
Thanks
we'll
so
see.
much for doing that.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. That's the least I can do.
Well, thanks for
But-
doing that, Tanya. That was nice of you. We actually did
Yeah.
get an application. There was an application in my mailbox right before Town Hall closed this afternoon. So we have one pending application.
Awesome.
That came in
Good.
today.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't notice
Yeah.
who it was.
Yeah, and then also I think we give a lot of bags, and then and some people actually took those printed information. So hopefully we get enough interest, for someone to show up again.
Very cool.
And just one thing, I guess we didn't put out our committee banner on the booth on the tent. So I don't know whether we didn't take it or it's just because
No,
we
it
didn't
was
put it
there.
out. Okay, so we didn't put it out. I was looking for it and then I didn't see it. And then I got busy, so
Oh, that's weird.
yeah. But just one thing.
That's a good point, though. I wonder where that was.
Yeah, and then I know it was not in the bag box because, I reloaded some reusable bags from that container, from that box, and I didn't see it.
Oh, those came from me. I delivered those, and then the banners were with the park staff.
Oh,
They were there.
okay. Oh.
So unfortunately, they didn't get over to you.
Any comment on that?
Sure.
Evie up here.
Yes, please.
Jim Payne, Superior resident. Just, as one who, when I was in ProStack, was pushed to get the banners for identification of the committees. Now, when there's been an increase of situations where where the committees are sharing a booth, the banners become all of a sudden very confusing.
Mhm.
So, and I heard some of the other committees, were commenting on that. So I don't know. It may be interesting to look at an option when they're combined into one booth, one tent, to have something that says, Superior Advisory Committees, and then list them or something. And you still could use your banners for other occasions when you're alone. But it just a comment that an observation that it got very confusing, and I heard some people say that too. So.
Sure, thanks for letting
Good
me
feedback.
know.
All right, so Martin, I'm assuming you have the newsletter stuff?
I do. So some of the usual items I'll touch on real quickly in the newsletter if you haven't had a chance to look at it. So it's election month, and some of our standing items are included in this month's newsletter. Budget went forward. There's the committee open house. I didn't have this as an update item, but on October 27th, we'll host the committee and commission advisory committee and commission open house here in this room, 6 to 7:30. Sorry, in this room. I didn't have a note on here to ask if somebody wanted to volunteer and be here for that.
What day of the week is that?
It's a Thursday. I'll include a note in the meeting notes, and if somebody can respond, if your schedule is available, just let me know. So we had a note about the vacancies, our standing list. As you all know, this group's got the 2 vacancies. ProSec had another person leave last month, so they're at 3, and then OSAC has 1 vacancy.
So Martin,
Yes.
the ProStack, I think the website also only show 2 vacancies. It's probably not that important, but I mean, it's probably better to update that when somebody stepped down.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it's on my list. I'll try and get to it.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
I'm not always real good
Come
about
on,
making the
Martin,
website
slacker.
updates. Usually somebody else has to tell me when I need to make a website update, and then I write it down, and then I forget about it until the next time. But yeah, thank you. I'm
Write
sorry,
it on
Tanya.
your
Thank you.
hand.
All right.
Martin, did you have windblown trash?
Yeah, windblown trash is in here, and then the options to discard unwanted items, the yard waste cycling, or the additional hours for the year-round recycling, which Leah's office was able to help us fund for this year, is ongoing. And then we had the windblown trash, so 3 of our regular items, and then Leah's office also sends us. Melissa on our staff, when she's assembling the newsletters each month, gets updates from the Energy Smart office, which are always great to include here. So thank you, Leah. A couple of transportation updates and Call and Ride. We've talked about Call and Ride a couple times with this group, and I always like to highlight this. We're trying to find some good ways to get the word out about Call and Ride, and it's been in the newsletter, and it'll continue to be in the newsletter. Those were the highlights.
I'm gonna ask you a really dumb question.
That's all right. Sorry.
Related to Call and Ride, so there's a, I didn't realize until one of my staffers told me that there's a bus that goes up and down, what's the name, Rock Creek Boulevard?
Rock Creek Parkway? Yeah,
Parkway.
the 228 bus does.
To get you to like the park and ride and whatever, right?
It's kind of a, if I remember correctly, almost like a dog bone shape. It makes like a figure 8
Yep,
from
it
over
goes.
on the Louisville side near downtown. It makes a
Doesn't
loop
go-
around Via Appia and then
Yeah.
comes down over here and then goes toward.
It's the only thing that comes into Superior.
Yes.
right?
It's the only
Mhm.
regular
Would it be a
local bus
bad-
route.
Would it be a bad thing to have on a schedule on the website?
Sure.
So hey, real quick, Lisa, the stop for that 228 is the one that's on the bridge. 'Cause So it like makes it,
Doesn't go
doesn't go
into
to the park and rides, but you can get off of it there
Yeah,
and walk
okay.
down to the park and ride on the other side.
Yeah,
That must be
you're
really
right, Lisa,
great.
that is a good point. I've had this,
Just 'cause
I've
I
had this a
didn't even
couple
know
of
about it, and
times.
it would be really helpful, because sometimes I would like to, catch the bus to
Mhm.
the airport,
Mhm.
and I've never done it because I didn't know how to get that first mile. So I've done Uber.
Yeah,
And I could have
yeah.
been thinking about.
So that 228 goes right by where you are.
Yes, it does. Apparently it does.
So,
says Michael.
Prostat.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate the call and ride does not start early enough for my needs.
Anyway, since that's a resource conservation thing.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've had
That's
links
a
to
good idea.
RTD information in the past about the bus routes, but I think we've had it in there off and on the last couple of months, but having the call and ride's really been our focus, and it's something that just fell off my list last month. Thank you for the reminder.
If the opportunity arises during the winter and into the spring with a wind event that we can tell is coming, substantial forecast, it would be interesting to try to send something out.
Oh, sure,
I know it's a
yeah.
Sunday night, but we're more likely to get people's attention when there's an event at hand than when we just send it out, so.
Yeah, that's a good point. So
If it comes up.
This group and Jim last year, if you remember, and also with the joint dinner with the town board, we talked about the enhanced communication on getting the word out when there's going to be a windy day to try and reduce the amount of windblown trash that goes from neighbor to neighbor. So it's been great to coordinate with the HOA trying to get that message out, but with the trash and recycle pickup day here on Monday, it's tough on Sunday to get an e-blast out. So when there is a predicted event, it's a good idea, Jim, to get the word out ahead of time.
Okay, very good. Thanks for making sure the newsletter has everything in it.
And then the last two items, the indoor water audits and then the do good for Keep It Clean are also listed in here. And the partnership with Charm, taking the hard to recycle items over to the Charm site, has been going well. We've had that since May, and it's gone well.
That goes as long as funds are available?
Yes.
What's it look like?
We're a little more than halfway, I think, if I remember correctly. I got my budget report last month.
Someday I'll get that TV loaded.
Definitely click your coupon. I have some printed coupons out here for
That's why I
anybody.
have that
And that's
sitting
funny,
on my
every
desk.
few weeks I'll go and see if there's any that are still there.
I need 2 more hams to get the TV loaded.
I'll help you if you help me.
I don't have a coupon for that, Joe, sorry. So those are some of our regular monthly updates that are in the newsletter, Michelle.
All right. Awesome. So budget now.
And then budget. So we talked about budget off and on for the last, 5, 6, 7 months. It's something that's an ongoing item for staff, and I appreciate, and I've mentioned it before, I appreciate the group's patience as we try to put together the annual budget request for the board. At the board's meeting earlier this week, on Monday night.
This week.
The board finalized the 2017 budget after our usual summer of budget meetings. I sent some of the meeting notices and the dates and times for the the finance committee meetings, and those went well. Those were, it's always it's a fairly intense, a little bit protracted process, but as like in years past, it's gone real well, and the board was happy with the changes that were made, and were able to hash through some of the questions and policy issues. And on Monday night, the 2017 budget was approved. All the items, I can't remember, well, we didn't have an official meeting last month. When Colleen was here last month, we talked about the fact that in the preliminary budget that was going to go to the board, had all the items that this committee had made as a recommendation were included and were approved.
Great.
Okay, good. There was something we were asking to pick back up, though, and of course I didn't get home to get my stuff since my other meetings ran 2 hours late. So I thought there was
That
something
new
we were
item?
trying to get snuck back in. Not snuck per se, that's not the right word, but.
Well, if there were.
We added some whole new ones, right?
No, not for the budget request for last year to this year, or for this year for next year.
I think the thing was, Lisa, that we tried to, and because we couldn't get quorum, is that what our problem was, Martin, or?
No, the group had talked about, let me bring it up here. This
Because
would
I
have
thought you were
been,
right.
what, July?
I agree with you, Lisa.
There were a couple of
I
items
agree.
that could be
I thought we were
incorporated
doing
into our
something.
existing budget that I think you might be thinking of, Michelle. Including a swag item and a couple of things that could be incorporated into our existing budget. Let me flip through the last couple of months.
This would have been it before the summer.
Yeah, it was like June, or is it the May one?
May or June?
June? Oh, June.
Probably June.
Yeah, it's a
So I had in my notes
Things.
to continue to include having some consultant time budgeted, and then I just wrote down discussion of bringing back bulk item pickup, and that was the change that was done from last year's budget recommendation to this year's. There wasn't a quorum, but the group was generally in favor of what was in last year's budget.
So Martin, can you?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Rebecca. So the last thing I wrote to myself, just as a note in parentheses, was possibly identify an amount to associate with the commercial green building codes. And then I wrote down that we had the discussion that the $5,000 that's used for consultant time or appropriated for consultant time could be used for that. That was the item that you and I had talked about, Michelle. This is in June.
Okay. Well, I guess there is some consultancy budget sort of within our existing funds?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That was, I think, the point of this, and it was
Okay.
essentially by acclamation with the group all in favor of that.
Okay. Well, it is what it is, and if we need more, we go and ask, right?
So I have a question. So you've been working with the county for the environmental sustainability funds, and that's been to keep and enhance the yard waste facility. Is the town planning to apply for the same funds again for the 15,000 that she was talking about to still continue the yard waste?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if the county wants to continue to use the same
But that's-
funding to do the same thing, but to do something net new, which this year was expanding the hours, and then next year we're going to look at enhancing the facility itself, which we haven't been able to budget for
Okay.
since
And
I
then-
was in the Parks Department.
Okay, and so then, I mean, would we plan to look into the zero waste grant as well, the 10,000? And is that matching? Do we have to have the funds for that?
There's no match.
For that one? Okay, so that's some extra funds that we could potentially look
Mhm.
into using. But the other fund for just the municipalities, the environmental sustainability one, we've kind of already, we want it to continue to enhance the yard waste.
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily, one is set and has to be required to be associated with one. If we can try and do, use the zero waste grant funding to do something along those lines as well, or help achieve any of the priorities that we have in our budget that be offset with some support from the county, that'd be fantastic, yes.
Yeah, we should definitely put that on the thing for next month, because, I mean, she sort of, I don't think she gave us a hint, but she said it would be great if we could use it to jumpstart a program, so I think
Yeah.
that would be great to look at what you're saying.
But the town is basically, there is 15,000 there that has been put up by the town in the past couple of years that's still there to
Mhm.
apply.
Yeah,
for.
yeah, so in the line that's associated with programs and activities for this, the $15,000 that was used last year, doesn't have a net $15,000 match. It has an in-kind component and also a cash component. And I can't remember what the split was for us. I want to say it was 25% cash match, and then 75 has to be either in-kind or hours or some other way of compensating and making up the town's portion of that. And then we get to work on the paperwork side of it, and then Leah and the folks in her office get to sort out all of our submittals for the grant paperwork. And it's worked out really well the last couple of years, because we generally do a pretty good job of keeping track of what we are able to achieve as when we do these partnership grants, and the county staff's always great at helping us figure out and make sure we submit the right stuff. So it's been a successful partnership over the last couple of years. We'll look forward to continuing it, and then we'll focus on right now for either potentially one or both grants, making some enhancements to the yard waste site. But if there is a particular program or an item that this committee is interested in pursuing, feel free.
Okay.
Make a recommendation or ask me some questions.
Okay.
Might be something that we'd have to do some follow-up research on. But we've got, a little over a month and a half to try and put something together for the zero waste, and it was how much?
Funding-wise?
Funding-wise, 10,000.
Yep.
Yeah, it
Okay.
opens in January, yeah.
And then the other one, yeah, applications will anticipate very early January.
All right, should we move on to the commercial green building measures then?
Sure. Yeah, so this is kind of the holdover topic. So last month, we had an opportunity to share with the board what the group's initial recommendation was with the list of sustainability measures. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but kind of the two-prong approach. The near-term approach of having some optional measures for the board to consider as a development application as process, and then a long-term goal to have a code requirement change. And then rather than having something that might have felt a little bit rushed for this group, the group decided to hold off and work on really dialing in the presentation and having a real focus. I think the word you used, Joe, was ask, like have a really well-defined ask for what the group is asking the board to either consider or approve or change or do differently. So rather than bringing something to the board at the first meeting or to the second meeting in September last month, the group decided to hold off and really kind of take it up again this month and find some ways to narrow this into specific changes, specific recommendations is what I heard, and a specific timeline to try and put those together and make a recommendation to the board. Like paraphrasing kind of what?
Yeah.
Okay, close enough. Y'all know what I meant.
Yep.
So here's the opportunity on the agenda to take that back up and see where you want to go.
Is there the start of a presentation? Or is there a blank page?
There's not a blank page, Lisa. The group worked very...
I didn't, did I say that mean? I didn't mean to say it mean.
No?
Yeah, so last time we did that really good scratch through, well, not last time, but a couple times ago when you were on the phone, Lisa, and we scratched through it. And then I guess we just couldn't recommend it to put to the board, right? Because nobody was here.
So there's not a PowerPoint, there's a document.
Yeah.
No, this
Okay.
is the
It was the
document
PowerPoint I
that,
was
so,
thinking.
yeah, so I guess the meeting you were here when you attended by phone, Lisa, the group had looked at an initial document using a lot of the ideas that Sharon Procopio had helped put together. And Essie took it and revised it for that subsequent meeting. And then he made a couple of follow-up changes, and Michelle and somebody else had a couple of changes. So I incorporated the last of those changes, and that's the document that's up on the screen right now. So this would have been like the third or fourth red line version of that that was going to be presented to the board.
So it was being
took the
presented
draft
from
off.
a document, not from a presentation?
Yes.
That was my question.
I'm
Sort
sorry,
of-
Mr.
I thought there was, I wondered if there was
I
a
thought
start.
we had points assigned.
No,
Yeah,
just
we
what
did.
the committee had put
Those
together
pictures,
was this
I'm trying
one
to find
page.
what the most recent version
So if
was.
I remember correctly, the
That's
plan
like
was to be able to
before
push this
that.
to them to get some initial feedback and then be able to actually solidify it really quick at the meeting following that. And then, like you said, request to make a formal presentation. Is that right, Martin?
Well, you
Getting
could,
on the agenda twice is better than once?
I'm sorry?
So,
well, you were on the agenda last month,
no, I get that, yeah.
Um,
We did it, but we deferred.
deferred, which is
I
fine, and then
understand.
getting on again, it's just a function of agenda calendar.
No, I meant, she's saying, go to them first with something, and then go to them again with something else.
I think it was a timing thing because like we had the meeting and then their next meeting was on Monday and we weren't able to put together a presentation. So if we can get back on the agenda, we can likely put the presentation together before we actually have it, right?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
So can you get us back on the agenda then, please, Martin?
I can't tell you exactly when. You know,
Mhm.
there's an election next month, so we have a jam meeting for the second meeting in October, and then the first meeting in November is going to be organizational issues with the new board, with the three new
Mhm.
members of the board.
Yeah.
So the second two meetings after, or the next two meetings after that, the second meeting in November and then the one meeting in December, both have pretty packed agendas, but I'll see if I can get some time on one of those.
Sounds good, and we'll just kind of keep on working on that and getting a presentation then with this information.
We were also looking at changing around the point structure as well, so that might be
Sweet.
something that would be good to discuss now, just so we can go over it. And I think, Michelle, it was like you touched the document last.
Yeah.
In terms of points, at least according to my email. So we could bring
Yeah,
that
because
up.
we
and
just have
then-
X points there, don't we?
Yeah, that's why I was like, I could have sworn we put up points to that.
Well, I have
Yeah,
something,
the group had-
somebody had points to remember.
Yeah.
I think we were really trying to like weigh the heaviness and stuff like that of certain.
Yeah, I
things,
did
so-
a really rough initial draft, and then I think a couple other people had provided feedback and some additional suggestions. And so
Mhm.
I've got an email on, let's see.
Which date is that?
This was September 8th.
Okay, cool, bring that up.
And Michelle, this is the one from you that I'm seeing.
post to see when we got X.
So Ezra, are you interested in trying to associate some points with those?
Yeah, so we had.
We did.
There's
Yeah.
a more recent version that I had done initial effort at putting points down, and I think Tanya and Michelle had both, or Kimberly, I guess, had both added additional feedback onto that. So if you want, I can just send you the email, the most recent one I have.
Sure.
If you want.
See how long
Yeah,
it
it'd
takes to
probably
get
be good
that.
to get
Yeah.
Sharon's feedback on this too.
Yeah, and I think it'd be much easier for us just to go over it briefly and make sure the points seem reasonable as a group, as opposed to sending it back and forth via email at this point.
Yeah.
So, all right.
You can actually just send it to boardroom@superiorcolorado.gov.
Okay.
Oh,
I'll do it
it's
too.
not beautiful. Not that I can see up there today.
Oh, I think that actually has it.
It's boardroom. So what was the email, Martin? It was
Boardroom@superiorcolorado.gov.
Go.
So the one that I'd say from the emails last month, I don't remember who came.
I think this is the same one I was just looking at. Yeah.
So I saved a couple of the different versions. So is this the one you were thinking of, Ezzy?
I believe so. That's the one that looks like the most recent one. to me.
So there was some dialogue on what the different point levels should be, and how to maybe weight them. I think some would be made sense to have lower numbers, and then if I remember correctly, the group was discussing whether or not it makes sense to have different numbers associated with different kind of sectors. You know, maybe a different. Yeah, so you could have a total number of points, but you couldn't have more than 5 in energy or 5 in water conservation. You couldn't just lump all of your points in one category.
Okay.
I think that's where the group landed on. Maybe we should really think about how to weight these, or how to spread
Gotcha.
the values out across the different options.
Okay.
And that's when I stopped saving them over each other. So
Fair enough.
I just left them in the email. So here's the
Okay.
last. I think this is the last email that had the suggested point range on here.
So
And
I guess the first question that you brought up is, do we want to make that stipulation that they can't get all their points in one category? I mean, I feel like
Well,
if
it's not so
they.
much they can't get them in one category, but they just have to have so many across multiple categories. And what
So-
should those numbers be? Should it be? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Pick a number associated with one category, and you can't put all your, like essentially get.
So if they
all
wanted
15
to
in one.
install on-site renewable energy, which was a more expensive, outlay,
Would that possibly
Would that
qualify them?
possibly
Because
qualify as
Because it's a
a-
lot more expensive investment, would it make
Right,
sense to
right.
give them all the points in one category because it was such a big add?
right?
Is there any chance you could blow that up one size bigger?
Sure.
Thank you, sorry, old eyes.
So on the one hand, I can see you wanting to promote both energy efficiency and sustainability and water conservation.
Thanks.
Sure.
On the other hand, though, for an individual building, I'm not sure, since we have limited number of options, whether it really makes sense to say you have to have X number of points from efficiency, X number of points from water. And, to your point, I think if someone goes out and installs a massive solar panel on their building and gets it all built really well, then I feel like that should count. But it's going to be much bigger than just doing a couple of smaller things.
Yeah.
So.
Should it be points or should it just be a minimum of at least one item per section? And then the points don't matter. If the total points have to add up to 25 or whatever your number is, but just make sure they do at least one thing in every category. The idea is to give them breadth.
That could work.
But then say you have a minimum, right? Because otherwise they could just pick the low-hanging fruit on
Well,
each
they
one.
still have to get a maximum
Yeah,
number
it's
of
the
points.
same
So
total.
if they
Mhm.
if they only pick the 2-point or tiny point items in each of the 5, they only have 10 points. So they'll still have to pick more if you weight it.
There could be an exception, so if somebody wants to make a $100,000 investment in a solar array, that might be more valuable than something else, and they would essentially get an exemption, or not necessarily just be approved as a separate item, not necessarily having to go through all the points. You don't want to not reward somebody for going over and above, right?
Right, exactly. That would be my only concern.
Yeah.
So call this the minimum, and if somebody wants to do more than that, then by all means, go crazy.
Mhm.
But I think the points matter less than just saying you must choose at least one from each category and have a total of 25 points. I think
Mhm.
So when you came up with the draft points, did you make them relative to the energy savings and or the investment? Or the
Yeah,
greenhouse
I
gas
tried
savings?
to, and there was some good feedback about suggested changes around those as well.
Nice.
But that was the original intent.
I thought you did a great job. I mean,
Mhm.
I kind of
Thanks.
cross-checked with sort of lead and
Yeah.
their emphasis, so
Mhm.
I liked a lot of your scores. And
Cool.
Absolutely,
Thanks.
yeah. I think just like me, like other people, I was like hoping to get, not to the point they would be able to get the maximum with just one item, but.
Right.
But I do agree that like if somebody had a massive project that was bigger than kind of what we're expecting, that they should be able to come and say, hey, can't this count for more because of the magnitude of it?
Yeah.
With the meeting notes that I
the
sent
la-
in September, I included the chart that Sharon had forwarded from Green Communities, and it was a great kind of breakdown that had, it was what, 15 or 20 pages of matrices that had different items and different point totals associated with them. And it was a wonderful logic, but it was very comprehensive. It was one of those things, the more I looked at the points, the more I said, this is going to be hard to figure out. You
Yep.
know, it wasn't overwhelming, it was just a lot of choices, and there wasn't a real clear, oh, this is a 1, this is a 4, this is a 10. There was a lot of variety. It almost needed to be tailored to the individual situation, rather than having kind of a broad brush application. I think that's kind of what the group talked about in September. So there's almost not a wrong answer, there's almost not a right. You could be as wrong or as right as you want.
Well, it's
I-
nice, this is specific to commercial, we're talking specifically about the building structure itself.
Mhm.
So you kind of keep the points and then just focus on this one area. A lot of things like lead sometimes go beyond that, depending on what you're
Right.
looking at, neighborhoods or other categories.
This last one needs rewriting. It says that building to the most recent ICC, should be IECC
Mhm.
code, but it doesn't say irrelevant if they, if it's adopted. It's phrased so that they get the 10 points if they build to whatever the code is, no matter what the town's code is, so it just
Mhm.
needs rephrasing.
Yeah.
Probably just to take that whole section about the town adopting it or not.
No,
Or
because you don't want it built to the most recent IEC. If the town
If the town
requires,
adopts it.
if the town requires the code, then you want it something beyond.
So
If they go
yeah,
to an
you're framing it
IECC
to
beyond
say
the what's
beyond.
adopted by the town, then they get points.
That's what
the
this
way it
is-
needs to be
Yeah.
phrased.
That's,
It's
yeah.
phrased wrongly.
Yeah, it's not the most recent necessarily, but it's,
Should we just say something like 10% above the current town code? Or something like that, or?
Well, I thought it was, the intent is fine the way it was, but
Yeah.
it's just phrased wrong.
Mhm.
They get points if they build to the code beyond what the town is, the IECC code beyond whatever the town has adopted.
Yeah.
And if there's
Yeah.
not one beyond what the town has adopted, they don't get those points, they have to go somewhere else.
Fair enough.
Right.
Okay, that sounds good.
It's just
Good.
phrased wrong.
almost always gonna be one beyond what the town's adopted.
Could be.
Yeah. It takes a while.
Yeah.
So should we just go through kind of point by point and just make sure that the points seem reasonable, and then we'll have it pretty much taken care of, hopefully? If
So
that sounds good.
before we do that, and
Yeah,
I
sure.
think that's great, can we just define our purpose? Because we don't want to get in the battle of changing town code, right? That's a long, arduous process, right?
Mhm.
So we want to present something to the board to present to the builders, like are these options? What do the companies get?
It's a menu.
Yeah,
So-
but
so-
is it required? Because if we can't require it if it's not in the code.
You can present it through the development review
It's-
process.
Yeah.
As part of negotiations, if they have variances or other issues where the town is having a discussion, they can say, here are some options to help us in the sustainability realm, given this variance. Like if they want to be they're 2 feet over some buffer, then during development review, they can negotiate.
Yeah, that's a good example. So we talked about this a little bit over the last few months. The development review process includes a lot of dialogue between an applicant and then the elected officials. And sometimes if there are some points that make sense to consider doing differently or do less of something or more of something else, having something to extract or potentially receive in return is an option that the board has and it can and has availed themselves of in the past.
Okay.
And using something like this is one of those options that the board would have through that process, just like Sharon described.
Okay. That's what I was trying to just grasp around, how you present it to the board and say, well, hey, okay.
Yeah, so have a menu of options like Lisa described, aren't necessarily didactic and have to be done the way a code would have to be complied with, but it's an option from the board from which to choose to apply surgically.
Okay. Okay. That's the point.
And it's also a first step towards, before we go ahead and
Try to-
hopefully improve the full building code that the city's adopted.
Okay.
So, because I think that's definitely really important as well. Thanks.
So did we want to try to discuss a big point goal and little points then, since we're here, or where is everybody?
I'd be happy to just go
So
through
you
it
wanted to walk through it.
point by point, and then we can just kind of hash it out rather than sending it back and forth via email.
Sounds
If
great.
that sounds good. I don't want to, keep us here too long.
Oh,
but,
it is what it is. We should get something done. I mean, how does everybody feel like about using a 10 or 15 point target or even higher so you can
I'm
give
gonna
some
wait to hear,
things?
to see what the total number of points
So
are, and
that's-
then.
is that what I was gonna
Once I
say,
know
should
what
we-
the total is at the bottom, then we can figure out what percent of them we want them to have to meet.
Okay, that's a good idea. So when we're assigning points to a particular item though, should we stay within a 1 to 10, do you all think?
I'd say if something is vastly more expensive, it gets a vastly higher score. So, I don't know, right? If they're gonna do a whole solar array, that's gonna be more than 10 times the, I don't know, putting in a recycling bin,
Mhm.
It's me many times more than that, so I'm not sure I think the range should be proportional to the cost.
Should we
Or close.
then maybe start with the cheaper ones and assign those points so then we can build the more
I think
expensive
we should
ones
go
off of
through in
that?
order because he's taken that into account already, and I'm just gonna look for things that seem out of whack.
Okay,
Mhm.
sounds good.
Yeah, and these are changed since I think my initial point structure, so be interested to see how those change as well.
And just
Well, this
forgive me
is-
'cause I
this
can't
is
actually
yours,
see it
Ezzy,
today,
with-
so you're gonna have to tell me.
With Michelle's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you could read aloud. I don't have my glasses either.
Yeah, my eyes just went wackadoodle, so.
So you see the two different colors here. So there's the points that I can't remember somebody had replied with. I don't know. It was, oh, look, it's Kimberly. So Kimberly had replied, and then Michelle had replied. So this is your original Ezzy with the two red lines over the top.
Yeah, so originally I'd been thinking that a 10-point scale would be just easy, but I agree the 15-point allows it to have a little bit more nuance. So that sounds good. Do we want to add in text about picking one per category, or just leave it as a point total?
I guess that depends on, if you're only going up to 10, then probably it's probably worth saying they have to have it in more than one category, or 3 out of the 4 categories, or something like that.
Mhm.
But if there's something that here that's a serious investment, and they do that,
And that's my only concern, is I don't
Yeah.
want to stop people from doing something big just because. Sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, sorry, I just realized too, I need to be on the record and not yammering from the background. Sharon Procopio. I would say too, I agree, you don't want to disincentivize a larger project with the minimum requirement. So
Mhm.
you could, I think at the very end, I thought we had a general category.
There is, I think.
And we had a kind of extra credit. I don't know if that got taken out. Implement an innovative sustainability project not listed above, pending approval. And I feel like that's your
Kind of a
gravy.
wild card almost.
That's your,
Mhm.
like, if you could somehow say, a minimum or a very unique project at a review and approval of the committee or the board or whoever needs to review and approve this, the development review committee or whoever it would be. That's how I would word it, is pending review and approval of.
Mhm.
You either do a minimum of 1 per category or
Okay.
a unique
Yeah.
innovative sustainability project. So I'd almost take that one
Just
out
move it up
and
top.
put it to the top
Makes
of
sense.
that minimum, instead of having it as an option.
That's a great
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
Thank you for the input.
Cool. All right, so if we do that, do we want to just run through the points real quick, and then we can hopefully figure out something that's reasonable?
Yeah, and, I mean, since you kind of wrote it all and took the chair, I'd love to do I'd love for you to do that, especially since you can probably read it, and I can't.
Yeah, good point. All right, for the blind people, no. Do we go, is that the very top?
Yeah.
All right, so the first one is install solar awnings, and that's currently at 5 points. So that's, slightly lower than mid-range. Next one would be evaluate the building using the DOE's free asset score and release the results publicly. And one of the questions would be, where would that data be publicized? And there's some discussion about whether it should be 2 or 3 points.
And I think it should be 2 because it's not requiring me to do anything. other than
Right.
Get a score. So I
And it's a
agree.
free tool that takes very little effort,
That's a
so.
very good point, yeah.
Yeah.
Keep it low,
Yeah.
just requires some work, but that's it.
And,
Okay.
well, I think there should be an incentive too you kind of want to shame them if they have a really bad score, so.
Right.
I mean, that's, right, you want to release the results publicly, so we need to find a way where.
Well,
So that goes beyond building code, that goes into reporting and
Okay.
benchmarking, which is a different kind of ordinance.
What was that all about? Where would we report it?
Well, you can't incentivize beyond the initial score here, because it's during construction.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have to, if you want to work on the score as an improvement, that would be something like the benchmarking ordinance that they did at Boulder.
it's
Or maybe-
ongoing. It's an operational outcome of how efficient the building is after it's built, not,
Right.
not
Yeah.
new construction.
So think with
That's true.
hard hats on only, what you can do when you're standing in the construction site.
Yeah, not thinking about heating bills a year after it's opened.
Yeah,
It's,
so asset score should be okay with that because it's just about what the fundamental bones of the building are and the materials. So that should be, I think that's why we decided on that one as opposed to any other sort of benchmarking. Yeah. And
And
Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, so it'd be great if you could try to get through these. We have two other things on the agenda. This is like the first time we've had a quorum for leadership voting.
Mhm.
And we have 10 or 15 minutes, so let's.
So if you guys
Well,
want-
that's
Officially
something we
until
really need
7.
to I think this is really,
So-
I think this is a really valuable discussion, but, yeah. So.
well, if we want to move on to other items, that's
No,
fine with
no,
me.
it's- I would like to do this, but I'm not sure I want to talk about every little element of it. I want to get at what are the points, and if I come up with questions afterwards, I'll send them, but I'd like to get an idea of, the relative points and hear about people's idea of the points.
To maybe take a quick
We'll
cut
move
at
through
it
it as
now.
quick as we can,
Sure.
Lisa, and we
Okay.
will make sure to
That
get
sounds
to the
fine.
election
Okay.
before we leave.
Cool.
Thanks, Ceci.
Yeah, sure. So the next one is incorporating on-site non-polluting renewable energy generation, such as solar, wind, geothermal, small-scale or micro hydroelectric or biomass, with production capacity of at least 5% of the project's projected annual electric and thermal energy consumption. I had originally put that in as 8 points on the 10-point scale, but if we're moving up to 15 points, then we can bump that up to 10 points
Yeah.
or something. I
Sounds
think
good.
10's good. Okay. So next one, set aside space that can be used for community solar, and the current suggestion is to bump that to 5 points. Is that?
Yeah, because it doesn't require much of an investment on their.
And it's just setting
it's a
aside
cost
space,
that
so
they had,
yeah, there is cost associated with it, but it doesn't directly do anything.
It's a guarantee that you get from community solar.
Right.
The only thing I might suggest is setting aside space may not tie it long-term, so there may be some language we need to put instead of set aside, so that it is locked in as dedicated to that.
That's what I was gonna say, is there some way,
Legally dedicated
insecure a
space or
contract for or something like that?
Something, so I think, but I don't want to talk about it long, but that's the only thing I see wrong with that one.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at that and see if there's a way to kind of rephrase that. And then the last one in this section is building to the most recent IECC code, or
That's more good or evil.
the code beyond the current adopted,
And
current one
sorry,
currently.
10 or 8? Let's see.
Yeah,
I'd give him a 10, yeah.
I think so.
It's gonna be an investment, yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay, so that's the energy section.
Cool.
All right,
It
so
already
I'll-
says 10
cool.
on there.
Yeah.
Oh, it already says 10. All right, any changes on
So-
any of these you want me to note on
Yes,
this? Ezra?
you
There was
want to
one.
highlight that last one because it needs to be rewritten. But
Yeah.
don't do it now, just highlight it so you know that it's got a problem.
And at the end, you can just send it back to me, Martin, and then I'll go ahead and take care of all this, all the edits we discussed, and then share it with the group just to make sure it's good. And then we
Perfect.
can talk about how we want to present it.
So the
Thanks,
second one
Ceci.
stayed 2 or went to 3?
It went to 2.
Stayed
Yeah,
at
let's do it 2.
All right, and then 8
Mhm.
went to 10.
Yeah, the full 10 points we agreed on. So all that's good, I think. Yeah. All right, so water conservation, the first one is integrating accessible water fountains that include water bottle filling stations. And current suggestion is 1 point per station. Does that sound reasonable?
I don't know how much they
No.
are, so I think that they could be a little bit more, like especially
No.
since the asset thing is 2. You know, you thought maybe you could give them 3 or 4 each.
An upgraded water fountain is not worth 1/10 of putting in all the new energy things in an energy
Right.
code, not even close.
Right, but we've given them 2 points for doing like an asset review, so.
Well, so the asset score will stay with the building for its whole length and be something that can be shared with realtors and everything else.
If this is one, then the energy code one needs to get bumped up because there's no comparison.
So how about we either consider, and you can put this in later for everybody to think about, we could consider that there's a minimum number and then assign it to like,
Or
1 or 2 points?
Or 1 point for, all of, no, that could still just be one
Yeah,
of
because if
them.
it's a big building, you don't want to punish them for having to put in 20.
No,
and
I
the
think
person
they should
puts
put in
5.
20. It's a big building, they're spending a lot of money, so.
Right,
Or
but
how
all
about
these
for
buildings
every
are different
fountain that's,
sizes, and we can't
for
know
every
that,
fountain that's
Lisa.
put in,
Yeah, but that's my problem. They could have one in the building and then
and then they get full
Yeah,
point.
Yeah, forget it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
That's what I started
But
saying.
if it's big enough to have water fountains, it's going to be a pretty sizable building.
Well, should we just do something really small, like 0.5 point per station, and then it's
All
still?
right. I bet you that's what they
That
do.
could bite you if
That's
you
true.
have 40. Put 40.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe the thing to do is to increase the code one.
Well, that's the thing, Lisa,
Or
we
maybe have
said
a
we were
cap
going to
on
go
this one.
through each thing
Or
and
you
then
could
be
put a
able to
cap on it.
reevaluate.
Yeah.
We already said that.
Yeah, I would just say you did a point for a minimum of.
Or like up to
3.
5 or something?
Up to 5 fountains per point. Or up to 10 fountains. You get a point for 10 fountains. If you have 20 fountains. you get
Yeah.
a point.
Yeah, not rewarding just multiplication of the same cheap option, but necessarily rewarding just doing once. You have to call it a minimum.
Okay, so.
Just put in parentheses at the end highlighted cap, and he'll edit it.
And I would
Yes,
say from a
so-
sustainability standpoint, I wouldn't go more than 2 points on this just because it's not a huge water saver, it's just.
Yeah,
for-
maybe we can do
Yeah.
like 1
Can't
point
give
per
points.
10 stations up to 2 or 3
That's a good
points.
point, yeah.
You get
Does that sound
points, so you
reasonable?
can't get
Maybe
double
2.
one, yeah.
Yeah, 2. Okay, cool.
Cool.
That sounds good to me.
And fix it.
All right, so the next one is including passive rainwater harvesting elements in landscaping and design construction, such as rain gardens or other low-impact development projects. 5 points. And then there's some discussion about what that would include.
So,
Seems high.
that seems high again, kind of in relation to the solar array thing, but then again, we can kind of go through these and think, okay, 5 sounds good, and go back to the solar array and say 15 or 20, yeah?
Yeah.
Seems a little high, but does it,
Benefits water
so it's,
quality.
is it making it so that the rainwater is the irrigation system, or is it only that you're collecting rainwater and, gee, that's good? What does that mean?
It should be conserving irrigation water and
Right.
improving water quality. So it should, that's significant.
Could be both.
And is it expensive
Can be
to put
used.
in?
Yeah, LA
Yeah.
isn't cheap to put in. I would put it in the same range.
Is gray
as
water in here
solar.
too?
Okay, just not obviously as on a big of a scale as solar. Okay,
You,
so we can consider keeping that at 5 or somewhere in that range then based on what we do for,
and I think if we have 15 points total and someone is, putting in significant efforts to take advantage of local water, then.
Irrigation.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll leave it as 5 for now.
Yeah.
Next one is implementing smart irrigation using water sensors and or weather tracking, using water sense guidelines or similar. 4 points for that. Is that,
and that's probably a lot cheaper than the one before it, so maybe that should be bumped down to like 3 or 2?
that's kind of thinking 3? Okay,
Yeah,
down.
3 or 2.
all right.
It's just doing it right to start with.
That was the next one,
Actually,
Don
yeah,
Martin.
next
Nope,
one, no.
sorry.
Yeah. Martin does that. The next one is using low flow fixtures and appliances throughout the facility. So toilets, washers, faucets, 5 points.
Too high.
So again, that's
I
a
think
tricky
that's-
one, because if
feels
it's a
high.
small one, they're getting the same reward that like a big building is getting, so,
No, but it's their
And if it's
building.
I'm sorry?
It's for, The one thing I would point out,
Regardless of building sizes, it is, if you're trying to incentivize it, no matter what the building size, it incentivizes. It's not that it's not like they're winning a better prize. They can still do the work for the same size building. I don't think it'll make a difference, but I would say we need to specify how low flow or site water sense.
Because
Yeah.
some of that's already
Okay.
required by codes.
Right.
We want
And-
to go beyond
and-
that.
And
That's
the reason
true.
I think that this should be really low point, one reason to make it really low point is because the incremental cost for a low flow is so little beyond
Right.
the standard equipment. But on the other hand, it is a lifetime savings.
Right.
So I see both those sides of it. I think, again, 5 seems high given the cost. So.
I think maybe if we, I think it's also worth saying use exclusively low flow fixtures, so it's not like you can just
Put
put
in
on a couple,
one.
then call it good and get your
Agreed.
points.
Yeah.
And then maybe bump the points to like 3, if that sounds good. So it's on par with the smart irrigation, because I think at facility level, probably those are relatively comparable.
And SC Denver Water has good language on this because they
Okay, cool.
require it for commercial buildings, or they have some language. So I'll forward that because that might make this a little more clear.
Cool,
So
that'd be
it's
awesome.
not too vague. I'll make a note.
Thanks. And then there's a suggestion to include one on implementing gray water systems for reclaimed water for outdoor irrigation and fill toilets.
Is
And
that
the current
legal?
suggestion is
That
5.
one's,
Is it legal
Is
to
it
do
what?
gray water?
I don't know,
I don't think it's legal.
in this state.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I
That's
mean,
the
rain
thing,
barrels
we
are
just
now
got the rain
legal,
barrels.
and we don't
Yeah,
have
look
that.
at that.
So I guess
But
you
that's
could-
residential, not commercial.
Yeah, it's
Only
not
residential.
commercial, and the town provides gray water systems for the irrigation to the commercial developments already.
So then it shouldn't get points if it's required.
So should we remove that
What
one
is the
then,
town-
or?
What's the town's source? Because gray water I thought was internal to a building.
No, this is irrigation.
But you get that irrigation water from gray water in that building.
No.
Yeah, I
but
don't,
reuse.
you can
We
do
use-
that.
we
instead
have
of
Reuse water is a different thing, and that's what you're talking about.
Well,
Right.
that's all we're gonna use is reuse water.
I don't think you can use gray water
Not in a commercial
in a
application.
commercial application in many
So-
cities or
So
states.
reclaimed
It's
water
just
is
not
what-
legal.
What you're saying is coming from the town,
Yes.
Mhm.
which is not.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it makes
So we
sense just
should
to get rid
redline that
of it.
one, yeah.
I think it's a little bit of it's a gray area, a gray water area. I've seen it come up in other conversations, like I've seen restaurants that have the hand washer into the toilet. In terms of water law, it actually is a really vague area where you can't use water twice due to water law. So,
Okay.
So,
So let's go ahead and get rid of that one then. And
well,
Yeah.
Or
Was there a way to, well,
would anybody in this, does the town already require use of reuse for irrigation?
For commercial, yeah.
all
Okay.
commercial and multifamily,
we
anything
don't
that
need
has
it
a
then.
master
Okay, we don't need
irrigation
points.
system, they all have to use that.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Need that one.
yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
So something to replace it then.
Sweet.
I can find something else off the Denver Water website.
Sure.
when I look for the
Yeah, if you have any
stuff,
other
so.
suggestions, that'd be awesome.
There might be something else,
Um,
low-hanging fruit or not.
So this is the waste management. So the first one is identify and establish areas or area within the development for on-site composting programs to reduce the amount of organic materials and waste sent to the landfills. Could utilize trash space volume already identified as part of parity. And then this is at 4 or 5 points.
Is that composting processing, or do you mean collection,
Just
yard waste,
gathering?
and food waste? Because I cannot believe that we'd be able to do on-site composting processing, and when I see composting program,
Mhm.
I guess I think of.
Yeah,
I-
you
when
would
I
need
hear
to have it hauled.
Composting as opposed to organics. I kind
Mhm.
of think of organics as the collection and composting as the process.
Yeah.
And so that makes me think you're talking about processing on site, and I can't see that being very popular given
So
the,
on-site
even a
or-
good site one is
Right.
So
odor rich.
On-site organic collections, is that what you're?
Mhm.
Organic collection, I get, but composting is an ambiguous term.
So maybe we should change it to
Organic collection.
organics compost or organics collection for
Yeah.
composting programs.
But
Although
Because somebody can pick it up, is I think what he's saying. Organic
he's
collection
saying,
to.
or composting, yeah. I think, yeah,
So he said 4.
the only things that we should suggest in there, I think, are that, oh, you already did not send to landfills, we're good.
Uh-huh.
So what do you guys think
I
about
would say
that point
instead say
value?
sent to a licensed, it should be sent to a
Yeah.
licensed
A
facility.
licensed facility, not just
And
dumped somewhere.
contracted or something
Yeah.
like that, and they like have to prove the contract?
Can the
as part of it,
building,
maybe?
during construction, as,
Or
well,
they
this
have to
might come to
maintain a
code.
contract through the life of the building or something like that,
Mhm.
Yeah,
subject to inspection by the town.
because then that's giving them a little bit more bang for their points than if we're making sure that they have to prove contract.
And I think originally we had talked about just having this being during the. Cool. Thank you so much.
Bye.
So.
'Cause I think
Just
it-
change the word so I would just highlight the word composting.
You were thinking of switching that to organics, Lisa?
Organic
Yeah.
collection.
Essie
Organics
gets it.
collection.
Yeah. And you want them to have a contract, like a
Yeah,
contract.
definitely.
You may not be able to enforce the lifetime contract because once the building
But if
turns
it's-
over,
If
but
it's open to
Right.
inspection anytime.
True.
Where's the
Yes.
contract requirement coming from?
well,
We're
I
gonna
guess
add
the,
that
I'm
in.
just suggesting it.
you're just, there's a difference between having a space to put a compost bin for collection and actually having a contract that the
Right.
tenant might have to maintain or the, so
At
they're
the time
different.
of project approval,
Oh, so this isn't a collection program, this is a.
That's, I
Yeah.
guess that's my only concern.
Space.
Again, hard hat, you're on the construction site, what are you telling the developer to build? Or is he able to license a company to come do collection? Would that be the tenant's responsibility? That's a whole
Good
different
point.
list
Mhm.
for building inspection process, which we're not at
So
yet.
it actually, we'd have to take
This
away
is
that
just
part of it and
baby
make it
steps.
nominal,
Baby
then
steps.
just
I
of a
think
point
it's-
value, like 2 or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Space should be very
One?
minimal. They're already
Yeah.
required to have space for recycling by
Yeah.
law. We
This
should
is just
change
a little
that to
extra.
one, maybe.
Recycling and
Mhm.
Organics.
But this should be changed to a.
So just like a
an
1
actual
point?
program.
I think a
Sounds
1
good.
point.
Program.
However, if you have like a composable material to pick up, that's going to cost business
Yes.
extra money. So,
Mhm.
I mean, and I don't like to put in organic there just because composable material doesn't necessarily
But the
like to be a organic material. You know what I mean?
Different
But
term.
the problem is that this is like for the builder,
Uh-huh.
this isn't for the occupant, so that's
Yeah.
why we're kind of pushing it
Oh,
back. Does that make
okay.
sense?
So if it's space for organics
Does that make
should be
sense?
way.
Lower.
Especially because I was saying like
Yeah.
this hard hat thing, and I have to
Mhm.
think about
One.
that.
and the town does the
The
collection.
builder,
contract.
like a
Have to put
day-to-day
in the space, or
Or not
facilities or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we
Oh,
would
no,
build
they
back
don't?
in the
Mm.
business
Right.
plan
We
to say,
should.
use it.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So,
Okay.
so do we want to keep
Nobody
this and bump it
wants to
down
be
to like
cold.
1 point or
Yeah.
just
I
remove it?
would,
Most.
I would,
Yeah,
I
less
would
than
keep
that.
it and bump it to 1
Okay.
because you're just using your parity space to give them an opportunity. If
Perfect.
they didn't give them space, they could easily say, well, we can't compost, we don't have
Right.
space.
Yeah.
Now a tenant has the opportunity. They may not take you up on it.
Right.
That's something to address in a tenant list of demands that we
Okay.
can do next.
Cool.
After this.
All right, so 1 point on that one. Next one is providing designated spaces for combined recycling, composting, and trash receptacles throughout the building, 2 points.
Yeah.
Really?
To provide, so like
For
a
space?
Well, it's building
Yeah.
in like an alcove or whatnot, so it's part of the design of the building to be able to accommodate.
So it's
a
harder
big
for a tenant just
bin or
to
something like that.
swap out.
Mm. So it's built in. You're talking about built-ins, not just putting like waste bins that could be
The 3
lost.
holes are the 2-hole cans, but actually having a dedicated space to go over and above what's already in the ordinance.
You want to write the word permanent, not just designated?
That's a
true,
good one.
yeah.
And
Or
then change it to
built-in,
one.
maybe built-in spaces, designated built-in spaces?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Designated built-in.
Because I think the idea is if you want it to work, it'll have to be built-in.
Yeah, because if it's just a space that someone can
Yeah.
put a chair in instead, then it kind of defeats the point. Cool. So the next one is using building materials and products that are recyclable, renewable, non-toxic, and locally produced to reduce carbon emissions and promote the local economy. 5 points. And there's a lot of comments on this one for good reason.
Well, I think my comment was I think we should have a specific target.
Mm-hmm.
And that I referenced what Martin had sent out in the Green Enterprise Community Guide.
Yeah.
So, they can, and then how do they do it? Do they have to do it all? Does it have to be recyclable, renewable, non-toxic, and sourced locally?
Mm-hmm.
Right,
You
or
know?
can they choose from one of those
Yeah.
categories?
I thought it was loaded.
Yeah.
I think that's a great
Mhm.
one because I think that deserves points.
Right, but it's definitely vague as written.
Super vague, yeah.
So I like the idea of doing, 50% as a minimum?
Uh-huh. You could say
Um,
are either recyclable, renewable. And that way they can
I think
choose.
that sounds good.
And/or.
So maybe I'll
Yeah.
look at some of those guidelines again, I can kind of restructure that. And then do we want to up the points to like 6 or 7?
Well,
Or,
if we're going to be pushing up the solar array, sure.
Yeah, I would say this is online with a solar array. And from a sustainability standpoint, maybe even more because you're talking
Right.
about using
That's true.
far less material waste.
Well, so-
even
That's
than-
true.
So maybe we're going to,
I wouldn't go beyond 6 or 7.
So-
Yeah,
so-
well, I guess you're right, the long term, you're not having energy reduction, you're, like you would in a solar panel.
so
It's
it's
a
like kind of
one-time
at the
thing.
initial thing. So 6 maybe? Let's hold it at?
How
Sure.
are you,
Okay.
how are you policing that? I'm just curious.
I think we would have, the problem with this one is you would probably need some,
Invoices.
you would need to look at the way they're doing in some of these other communities to see what they use for verification, and that would mean someone would have to be doing verification on this one in particular.
That's true.
Which isn't necessarily bad, maybe it's the committee, and maybe it's just some, I don't know, it would be, that could get complicated.
It's again something they would have to show a contract for because they would have to have contracted to do it,
Invoices,
right?
yeah,
Mhm.
contracted invoices with sourced recyclables would probably be the best way, but someone has to review those invoices then, and
The
that's not
idea of seeing
something.
how other communities, if other communities are using this, you're sure of that? And-
Let me see what I can find on
Yeah.
Cool,
actual
thanks.
use cases, because I don't know how often it's actually been picked up, so let me see if I
Mhm.
can find some examples.
Okay.
And then the last one is contract with both trash and recycling from the beginning of the construction, 4 points.
2 points max, I would
Yeah,
say.
Yeah.
I would agree.
And I'd say.
I agree.
Not, and that they, do we want to set some goal or like 25% or something that ends up in the recycling bin? I don't know. Never mind, but I wouldn't go beyond 2 points,
I think too.
given the cost.
One of the things we were running into previously is the more we, like, because there aren't resources allocated to verify, it gets hard to be too specific, even though it'd be much preferable, at least for this, so.
Cost-wise, that shouldn't be more than 2.
Yeah, so 2. Okay, so the very last section is general and community building. So the first one is install a green planted roof at 10 points.
So it probably needs to come down based on like the solar array sort of stuff, so what do you think? Like
Green
somewhere
roofs are
between 6
really
and 8?
expensive though, so,
And.
because you have to rebuild, or build up the whole foundation
Structure.
a lot more for the building and the whole structure.
And what does it mean for long-term
It's
savings?
less
Well,
energy use
it should
because
reduce-
of
I know, but
the,
what percent? Is it?
I think it's also it's a community value thing. What are you doing with the green planted roof? Is it just
Right.
visual? Is there
That's
a
true.
community
I-
garden
I'm having a
aspect?
really hard
Oh,
time
sorry.
figuring out the
I'm
years.
I'm wondering if, the community benefit value here too, is it becoming a park space? Is it public access? Is it private access?
Mhm.
Or is it just a green?
A park space?
Well, if you're turning into a green roof, is there public access? Or is it just a bunch of plants on a roof? And
I was thinking
how-
just a bunch of plants on the roof.
Yeah,
then
and if
you're
it- if-
alleviating the urban heat island effect and saving energy,
Yeah.
and it looks nicer.
So the
Um,
impact is there. I mean, I don't know that the reduction is,
so maybe 6?
Yeah, 10 is too
Yeah.
high.
Okay.
6
Yeah.
sounds better.
6 sounds good. Next one is plant at least 8 native shade trees for 4 points.
I'd say 2.
2 points. Cool.
Yeah.
How many cottonwoods can you take?
Non-cotton bearing.
Next one is install bike racks, 2 points per rack of X number of bikes.
Do you know how much a bike rack costs? I mean,
actually.
Right,
7
but-
points is insane.
$700.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
about what we used to pay
Yeah.
for them in parks.
Oh, okay.
$700 a bike rack?
I
Yeah.
would say,
Yeah.
We should have a code
It should be a
requirement
ratio or
for
something and
X
say-
number of bike racks per building.
Square foot.
and
Yeah,
that's the way
true.
this should be specified, that if they install, a ratio of so many per employee or something like
To
that.
parking
then they get
spaces.
2 points or 1 point.
Or
Makes sense.
customers, you know.
I like the idea of bike racks to parking spaces or something like that, like for every, if you install, I don't know what the right
No,
number
just give a
is. but-
threshold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they do that threshold, then they get a point.
Mhm.
If they do, and not
One.
this,
Yeah.
increasing, because I would just buy a hell of a lot of bike racks.
That's true.
And that would be it. And it could be
Yeah.
nonsensical bike rack numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, you're so
Um,
devious.
So we need to reevaluate the way
Well,
that
no,
one's
I'm just trying
worded.
to think from the,
I know,
The
but
other
you
point of
didn't
view?
come across very nice, so.
Yeah. Have you seen anything along those lines, Sharon? that would
Honestly,
help
it's
in that
usually a
metric?
density issue. You're trying to reduce you want to improve public transit, so you want to
Mhm.
reduce the number of parking spaces and increase the number of bike racks. And there should be a
Right.
metric out there, and I don't have it to quote, but I can probably find something.
Okay, cool. I'll look around too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
Otherwise,
a,
this per square foot is fine.
Okay.
For the building.
That makes sense.
Because that respects the occupancy then, yeah.
or yeah, based on occupancy.
Sounds good.
So the next one is install one or more charging stations for electric vehicles at 7 points.
How
I
much
think
is
if the
each
green
charging
planted roof
station?
is 6, then that shouldn't be more than 6.
Yeah,
Either
I
bump
agree. Maybe
green
5.
planted up to 7 or bump that down to 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the one outside?
How much
Mhm.
does those cost?
Yeah.
2 grand?
10
They're about
grand.
$7,000 now just for the purchase, and I don't know.
So
how
should we
much
say
they
two
It's
or
install.
probably
more then
15
to
grand
get
to buy and
5
install.
points?
Yeah.
I would have thought.
It's got to be several $1,000s for the install and then to bring wiring, so if it's a
So
replacement. it's
If you're
not gonna be
changing the
much.
3-phase
2 or more.
power,
If you're building from scratch and you already got the wires, the
You
wiring.
still have to bring it over.
You still have to
Like
bring
our
3-phase power.
installations, We've had to cut parking lots, so it makes it upwards of $18,000 to $20,000.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably what, 10 to 12.
I'd say
15-ish.
between $10,000 to $20,000 depending on where you're installing them
Yeah.
and buying them.
Should we say 3 then for 5 points, or do 2 for 5?
I
I
think
would do 2 because
one-
you also don't want to start like crowding out, because there still aren't that many people with electric vehicles, so
Mhm.
you also don't want to crowd out existing parking spaces too
So
much
2
either.
then, and how many points? 2 points? 3 points?
I guess 3 points if you've got bike racks that count for anything more than 1.
Yeah, I would go for like 3 or 4.
I'd say
That's
3 or
what I
4
said.
points for the EV. I don't know. I think
But
it
also promotes electric
incentivizes.
vehicle usage within the community as well, so.
And if they make them solar EV charging, they get double points.
That's true, we could do 1 or more solar charging stations for electric vehicles.
Yeah, they exist. I know Boulder has one downtown. So if
Yeah.
they were
Yeah,
they
solar,
have
I
in
would
some
give
places.
them, I would double that. Like 3 points if it's just an EV station and 6 if it's a solar charged EV station.
Sound good?
6 points when you get 10 for meeting the energy.
Well,
goals
oh, that's
for the whole
true.
building?
So maybe we say 2 and 4.
Not-
You're right.
Yeah, 2 and 4.
2 and
Way
4.
out of
We're
scale.
decalibrating. You're
2
right.
would be the max, I would think. But, yeah,
All right.
given what it means for
So
the
4
long
for
term.
solar and then half as much for wired? So
Yeah.
2 and 4?
But again,
Sure.
you're encouraging EV mobility, which I think is also valuable.
Yeah. So next one is providing space for a community garden, community support agriculture. And yeah, that's misspelled.
Mm.
That's okay. I'll take care of that later. So those at 3 points.
Yeah, I agree with
think
that.
the way people are going to get around that one is, it doesn't specify a size, does it?
Well, this is kind of,
And
the
it's-
town's going to require a certain amount of space.
As buffer and.
Are they?
Yeah,
side
Yeah.
yard,
but
yeah.
how it gets used, that gets a little more amorphous.
It
Is it going to
does.
be a park? Is it going to be what, you know?
And how do you make sure it gets retained as that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That has to be in negotiation with the town if they choose this option, and the
Yeah.
town has to go through a process.
And, you know, if they're going to sell a project, they usually want to make it nice.
Should we pull this off the list then? Because it seems like
I don't know.
for the builders, it might be tough to, if this
Confusing.
actually gets used in the
Yeah.
original way.
Might be something just to keep in mind for post.
Well, it also
It could
goes
also- it
with
could be like the last one.
the walkability trails, all that.
mhm.
It's the same kind of thing.
That's true.
Yeah. They're both, these are more community value ones. That's why these were a little hard to categorize because they're kind
Yeah.
of vague, but
And
they.
they're going to be required to
So maybe
leave
that's
the
thing.
space.
Maybe instead of
Yeah.
assigning points for that, say that the town will deign that you're gonna do some of these next sets of things, period, above and beyond the whole point system. And not assign points that would make the town.
These
push
are really-
forward as many of real trails, not
Yeah.
planning for trails or whatever, not promoting trails, but
Or
actually
trail-
making trails.
Connections to existing
Yes,
trails.
Yeah.
exactly, and they may
That's
assign
really
that
what
you're
we
gonna,
want.
you're gonna have to
Yeah.
do some community garden stuff, and they may assign that you're gonna have to do this, and that's, just be aware, that's gonna be part of the
We just
negotiation,
went
that's gonna
over that
be
with the hotel.
above and
Either
beyond the point
It's
system.
in
Okay.
the approval or
And
it's
you're
not
going
in
to
the
get to the
approval.
conclusion.
So is it not something that's point-based, it's something for the development review committee to know going into negotiations with the developer, that these are values?
That's what I'm suggesting.
I think that makes sense. I mean, it's hard to put a point on it.
That's why I think
They would have no trouble
that's saying,
meeting most of these.
some set of these are gonna be required outside of the point system by the town.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if there is a point,
Expected
it could be an
negotiation.
assessment that's a higher.
Right,
It
these
be two
could,
or it could
And
be
that they
20.
can't substitute for the points above.
right, but these are elements that will be
Extra.
considered.
Well, should we, if we're going to move the sentence about implementing an innovative sustainability
Yeah.
project not
Oh.
listed above, if we're going to move that up to the introduction anyway, should
Mhm.
we use some of those as examples of things that, if
Fit, innovative.
done sufficiently well, could qualify for offsetting points, or?
No, I don't think it should offset points.
No.
Okay.
I don't think any of those things should offset points.
Those are more your values. You're kind of stating up front that we want this development to have these elements, and those
Right.
will be part of this. Absent points, we want the development review board, as they're reviewing these developers' final phase plans, to look for these. So it's almost
Yeah.
like you're giving the development review board
A heads up.
a compass to say, look in this
Gotcha.
direction. Because they
So-
are pretty vague to try to enforce, I think.
Should we go ahead and pull them off of this document then?
I would.
Move them elsewhere?
Or you
Or
could
move
put it in
or-
more of
I
a,
don't think so.
they don't need to
It's
come
not-
off, just put them in the introduction as like,
Yeah,
here's what the town
Okay.
values.
Or at the bottom.
Yeah.
I don't.
Or at the
I
bottom.
don't think we should lead with that stuff. I think we should have that I don't
At the
know.
end?
And have it be not necessarily
Doesn't matter.
point-based. It could be
Yeah.
a point of negotiation that's either included or not included. And it's going to be based on a recommendation from the committee to the board.
Maybe these are gold keys that you put at the end. They're not point-based, but here's some gold keys for the town that we find are important, and these are
Mhm.
part of that.
Okay, cool.
So I think you can keep that in the document. They're not point-based,
gold.
but they're just gold keys or key gold. I call them
Gold keys.
gold keys.
Gotcha, okay, sorry.
Like the magical gold key.
Yeah, gold
So
keys.
like,
Okay.
these are our big things that we think are important as a committee, and that
Yeah.
you want the development review committee to tell the developer are important to the town.
But I think we should stress that they cannot, they don't help meet the points.
They're just setting the tone.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I would almost say pull those out. Maybe they go at the front as an introduction, or maybe they go at the end as a conclusion.
Oh, that's
It
a
doesn't
nice way
matter.
to say that.
Yeah, okay, I'll see where it seems to fit best, and then obviously I'll go around to everyone, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I wouldn't mind, and thinking back on all the points, I wouldn't mind seeing the IUCC's thing go up 2 points or something.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Cool. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate the time.
Appreciate the walkthrough.
So we'll talk about like then the total points after we kind of send it around for
Oh, God,
re-review?
right.
Yeah, so I'll do a next draft of this and then provide it to everyone, and then we can
And we can
make sure it
put
makes
the
sense.
total.
Yeah,
Okay. That'll be easier, once we have some points assigned.
yeah.
This is just me filing it, so I
Yep.
appreciate you, Kimberly and Michelle, forwarding your red lines on top of the initial version. So
Well, they weren't all red.
some variously colored lines.
Non-black.
It was a good exercise to do in
Was
December and
good.
September.
So you definitely don't need the track changes, like just clean it up and.
Yeah, I just figure as a next draft, I'll just get rid of all the track changes and we can start over again from there.
Wait till you see what it looks like when the board finishes with it.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We
Joe's
should just
getting-
track every single change that's made.
Joe's been saving some of that humor.
This has so much fodder for them to play with.
All right, good. So what's our next
Cool, thanks,
thing
everyone.
then?
Thank you.
Agenda?
Work plan.
weird.
So just a reminder, every kind of September, October, we bring up the work plan and start kind of a 2 or 3 meeting dialogue on any changes going into the next calendar year. So it's October now. We got 3 meetings before the board's going to consider their work plans. Usually in January. Usually the second meeting in January, maybe the first meeting in February, depending on what the agendas look like. So usually I've sent this in the past. I send this with the meeting notes. Say, okay, here's this year's goals. Bring some ideas for changes to the next meeting, and then we'll put them up on the screen, and you all can have at it.
I say let's do that because we won't have as much to do next meeting because we really accomplished the green thing. So just do like you said, send it with the
Send it with the meeting notes?
agenda.
That makes sense.
Well,
And then
send
we
it with
can-
the agenda for next month too and say,
Well,
hey,
yeah, I'll send it with
remember,
both.
and then, yeah,
Okay.
everybody come with it, and then that'll be a big goal at that meeting.
Cool.
Thank you.
This only has to last for one more.
And then leadership election. So This is the first meeting of the year in which we have.
Quorum, yay!
It's shocking.
I nominate
So
Essie.
according to the ordinance for the town, the first meeting the next calendar year, the new calendar year in which there's quorum, you pick a chair and a vice chair.
So the persons could be in office for 2 months.
Yes.
Got it.
Exactly.
At this point.
We can just assume that they'll
Or-
continue on.
Because
Or if you don't have a quorum, the person could be in for a long time.
That's
Yeah, that's true.
Next October.
Next year.
Next October.
3-4 years,
As
who knows?
Michelle will tell you.
I know, Mike, I've been stuck here for a while. No, it's okay.
What are the responsibilities of the chair? and
I
vice chair?
nominate Essie.
Uh-oh. What have I done?
Too much.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, Martin probably can give you a better direction, but honestly, he sends me the agenda, makes sure that there's not anything that he missed, and then might send sometimes the notes to say, hey, did I miss anything in those? And then I just respond back, and that's about it. And then you just call the meeting to order, and you're trying to guide us through the agenda. That's it.
There are no
Use the
special
gavel.
powers. You know, it's a little bit like the mayor and the board of trustees. There is an impaneled person who
You can
help
ask
facilitate the
Martin to bring
meetings and then
cookies
work
to
on
the meeting
agendas.
if-
Excellent.
I'd
Every single
second that
time.
nomination.
I've heard.
Yay. It's passed.
Good choice.
Is there a vice chair?
There is. Not all groups have one. Corinne served in that capacity for this group when she was here.
But then she
last
left, and we
year,
haven't
and
had
she left,
quorum
and we haven't-
since.
I
We
wouldn't
haven't
mind being
had, we haven't
vice-
had quorum and we haven't had a vice chair since.
I wouldn't mind being vice chair.
That was last fall.
Anybody else want it? You good?
Sounds good to me.
Second? Third? All right, sweet.
Good, okay. So what I heard was by acclamation, the group is appointed or is voted to have Essie as chair and Lisa as vice.
That's it.
All
Sounds
right, I
great.
appreciate
Very
it.
good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Powerful.
guys. Much appreciated.
Fingers crossed that we get quorum again sometime in the next 2 years.
Yeah, that is your job now. You have to round everybody up.
When I retain power, I have secret meetings.
You gotta
right?
There you go, yeah.
You gotta think what you can do to get the quorum more reasonable, more
Yeah.
frequent. What-
Thanks.
Yeah,
what
definitely.
I know what we do.
Thanks for
We
powering
bring
through that.
snacks.
would
Yeah.
help?
I make a really good cheesecake.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
That would help.
I'm not gonna lie, that's how we got people to come to PTO meetings. We served food and drink.
Anything else
Yeah, I
on the
think
agenda?
food's a
Didn't
generally
you
good
take some?
Cool.
one
Thanks,
time,
everyone.
Like a meeting
Good job
and
today.
took like
It's
the,
good.
like cake?
Yay,
Some
quorum.
sweet
At last.
stuff? When your daughter was here?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think this might be the first time since I started here that we've actually had
So
quorum.
what you have done today is good, and what I recommend before you, when you present
For
it to
another
the
year.
board is have it in
While
very
waiting.
crisp form of
It's hard
what
to
you,
tell, like, yeah.
how you envision this working,
Yeah.
and this is
I'm
what
glad that we had enough
we have
tonight.
discussed and why, and what,
Like,
some rationale. You
Yeah,
guys talk
absolutely.
about rationale for the points, you know, so
There were three down,
just,
but that's.
Yeah, just make it clear.
just take it
No,
through,
we have
because
two,
don't give
we
them
have
the
two, no, we
chance
have
to
two
run with it.
bacons.
Yeah, absolutely.
She came here maybe last time.
Okay.
So I never met her.
Yeah, there's gotta be something,
There has
but
to be.
I just think about it, it's like, what would you?
I can't pull it out.
Yeah, and then, you know.
Yeah.
There's definitely like folded, even like about her, I told Marta.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
nothing worse
I mean,
than
I did,
riding
but
your
I
bike
didn't.
somewhere and you don't know where
Well,
to put
I
it.
remember
Showing up and there's 8,000 bike racks in your parking lot.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So I was in Monterey, California for work, for a work conference, and I rented a bike because they have tons of bike rentals, and there's no place, not a single place in the entire city to actually put your bike.
That is
And
the
I asked
last
people-
place I think that would be a
Right?
problem.
And they've got this like beautiful bike path that goes all the way through the city and everything, but just no bike racks anywhere.
No
And I asked people about it, they're like, oh yeah, we don't have those. And I was like,
People can steal bikes here, you just leave them anywhere.
Yeah,
There's-
apparently.
There's no stopping in Monterey.
yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to.
You guys, for exercise only, you just go out and back.
It's called incentive, as you-
Yeah, there you go.
This is a good idea. It's coming together.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So in November, you should have a new board liaison, and I have no idea who it will be, because there'll be 3 new board members.
Yep, sounds like it. It'd be interesting.
It's been fun working with you guys.
Yeah, it's been great having you over, so.
Frustrating. You guys have such enthusiasm. And my thought of on the quorum is a different meeting time, because it seems like it's work related a lot of time.
Yeah.
Just my thought, but you have to have a quorum to do that.
Right, actually get stuff done. Yeah, totally. Cool. Yeah, thanks again for all your help and all your contributions.
Well, they're not,
Well, it's really valuable here.